First of all, Hannah Weisfeld is the executive director and founder of Yachad, which is a British Jewish organisation which supports a political resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Hannah, hello to you. Welcome to the programme.
Hi, Tony.
Hi. We spoke before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Great to chat again. What do you make of that description of areas of London becoming a no-go zone during these protests? Is it something you recognise?
Look, I think there is a reality, and it's a factual reality that since October the 7th, the spike in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia has been significant. And Jews and Muslims in London and around the country are feeling threatened, they're feeling, I think, marginalised, and they're feeling scared. Having said that, it is not the case that you cannot walk into central London. And I think we have to get things in perspective here, because we're in danger, really, of actually pitting two communities to each other, saying that either you can be in support of the Jewish community against anti-Semitism, or you can stand in support of the Palestinian people, but you've got to choose, and that they're mutually exclusive. And I think it's that kind of rhetoric is very dangerous, and we really need to find a way to dial it down and deal with people's legitimate fears, but put them in perspective.
So when you say dial it down, then are you accusing Robin Simcox of escalation?
Yes, I think that to say that there are no-go areas for Jews, it is an escalation. I think it's absolutely right to say that there are pockets of individuals and small groups in those demonstrations that shout threatening things, that hold placards that are offensive, and those people need to be dealt with to the full extent of the law. But to suggest that, to imply that the hundreds of thousands of people that are on the streets are effectively there to terrorise Jews, which is kind of where this debate is leading to, creates a very fearful atmosphere, and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you turn around and say these areas are no-go zones for Jews don't want to go, and then they don't go, and then they can't go. And actually what we need is officials and our leaders and governments to say, people are nervous and scared, and it is our responsibility as the people that lead this country to maintain the social fabric of Britain. And actually it feels to me, as a Jew who's been invested in trying to work in support of a resolution to this conflict for over a decade now, that actually this conflict is being used to stir up social division and tensions, which are bad enough already. We don't need to make them any worse. And we actually need people in government to turn around and say, we need to sit down with communities and work out how we live together in London and in the UK, protecting people's democratic right to protest and safeguarding minorities against racism. And that is not being heard at all.
No, the Prime Minister, or certainly the Prime Minister's spokeswoman's tried to kind of add a bit of clarity to those comments and she said that he meant by no-go areas that there was intimidation by a minority of protesters in these protests at the weekend. So just to be specific about that, before I just want to go to more broader issues with you in a sec, but just about that, if a minority are intimidating, then that would say that these areas are no-go for people from the Jewish community.
I think the term no-go implies that whole neighbourhoods of the city are cut off to a whole minority group that are living within the city. There are groups of people who are causing problems, and I think that's a really different thing. And I think language really matters, because once you paint a picture that there's whole neighbourhoods, whole districts, the centre of town is no-go and you can't go there, that's a very different statement from saying within the body of those protesters there are small groups of people who are causing problems and are anti-Semitic and are racist, and we need to deal with those people. But I think that once you start talking about it's being a no-go area, you're actually saying something quite different. And the fact that the government, the Prime Minister's spokesperson has kind of had to backpedal it shows how dangerous that rhetoric is, because you're painting a picture that is just not correct.
Yeah. Hannah, I just want to ask you one more question before we move on. When we spoke last time, I said at the start that you support a political resolution to the conflict. It's hugely polarised, is this issue? And it's just your perspective. Has it become more polarised as we've gone along? Are you seeing any areas where people are coming together with that joint aim?
It's kind of interesting, because simultaneously it is more and less polarised. I guess by which I mean, if you look at the discourse and the rhetoric here and the conversation we've just had, it's unbelievably polarised. What I think is is interesting is that there is a growing understanding, and that we have not seen for over a decade in the international community, that this is no way for Israelis and Palestinians to live. And actually, for a long time, the international community has kind of looked at Israel-Palestine and said, this is too complicated. We don't know what to do with it. And actually, if we just maintain the status quo, maybe we can just get on with it by ignoring it. And I think where there's been real kind of coalescing of thinking is around the idea that actually that is not good enough. And in the aftermath of the horror show of the past 5 months that is ongoing, that the international community needs to take real leadership and action. And that is really what we are pushing for, which is that we cannot allow, when the war is over, we cannot go back to October the 6th.
Hannah, it's always interesting to talk to you. I hope you'll come back on the show. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
Thank you. Hannah Weisfeld, their Executive Director of Yachad, as I've already said, a British Jewish organisation supporting a political resolution to the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.